the reality, let's start with just some minor statements. When we're talking about rescuing a troubled project or a failing project, that's never a great time. Having been part of a few of them and part of not only rescuing them, but part of participating in a few during my career, I am not sure that I ever want to do, at least on the participation side, again, rescuing it, a little bit more fun, but very frankly, first to start with, when we're talking about troubled projects or failing projects, something has gone tragically wrong. We've had the proverbial train wreck kind of thing. Nobody is having fun. And there's generally a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth going on. So given all of that, the question becomes whether or not we actually recognize what's going on. We know something's wrong. People are just not having a good time. We're not delivering. But that doesn't mean we know really what's happened, in essence. So the first place to start in any of this is to look at sort of the typical signs of problems that are going on. There are generally signs, and those aren't the signs necessarily on a bulletin board on the wall that tells you that things are going on. There's team conflict. People are arguing, whether it's over scope or organization or who's doing what. We have all sorts of team conflict going on. There might be scope issues. Scope creep, scope churn. It's actually, scope churn is scope creep's friend, but much more nefarious. We might think that we're building the wrong thing. All of this kind of stuff is happening in front of us. Poor communication, poor quality, lots of defects. But given that, it's not enough to understand that there's signs of problems. It is a good idea to know that. That's a step in the right direction. But that's really all about generally finger pointing. These are intrinsically interesting indicators, but they're generally not root causes. And to get into a discussion about how we salvage or how we rescue a failing project or a troubled project, we have to understand what those root causes are before we can intervene. Not that people don't try. And we all have a number of individual biases that tend to point us in different directions because that's what this looked like last time we did it, or this is my perception of what's going on. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to fix the problem. So we have to deal with getting to root cause, or what I call stuff happens. And very frankly, most challenged or failing projects are caused by things like requirements problems, or lack of support, or technical mistakes, or lack of resources, or unrealistic expectations. And if you don't think that list is complete enough, there are probably any number of other reasons. If you just go back and pull out a chaos report, and I know that there are all sorts of interesting discussions about failure and challenge and all that, and the value of a chaos report, but at least it gives us a nice sort of laundry list of things that could happen. But if we assume that we have a rescue situation, we first have to figure out what the problem is. For instance, if we were thinking about it's a scope creep problem, and we decided to tackle that tackling scope creep didn't make sense, if the problem really is that it isn't scope creep, but we just had bad requirements to begin with. You could just knowing really, we can't just say, okay, scope creep, we'll just stop doing scope creep if we have bad requirements, because that would mean we'd be knowingly building the wrong thing. And very frankly, knowing that you're building something that nobody wants is its own sort of failure. So in order to address whether or not a failing or challenged project, without doing or at least requiring or making a decision based on a huge amount of emotion, we need to have a framework to approach this kind of a problem. So a very simple process, and there are all sorts of other more intricate processes, but they basically, I think if you bring them up a level, they start with assessing the project, sort of this quick framework. What is it that's really going on? Do we really need to do anything? Or maybe the answer is we really do need to do something, and rescuing the failing project or troubled project really isn't the right answer. Maybe taking it out and just stopping it might be the right answer. So we start with some form of an assessment. We'll talk more about assessments in a little while. We could then plan the intervention, assuming we decide to go forward with it. Obviously, you don't want to jump in and say, hey, I'll just start to randomly make changes, because we wouldn't know what was actually going to happen. Then we make a break. Whether we call it a jump start or we call it something else, there will come a day when there has to be a bright line in the sand, and that we decide after today everything is going to be different. And then follow up with coaching, and then hopefully celebration. So a very simple kind of a flow through how one goes through this. And obviously there's a great amount of detail beneath this, so let's start with that whole discussion of assessment. There are a myriad number of ways to actually assess an individual project. You can do model-based assessments, and we talked, when my bio got read out, things like the CMMI, like ITCMF, like COBIT, and these are large sort of industry-based, macro sorts of best practices that we could say, are we doing this? Are we doing requirements management? Are we making decisions correctly? Those sorts of things. It provides a framework. The framework is many times important because it divorces us from the whole idea that this is an emotional decision. Because very frankly, anytime you're dealing with something that's challenged, there is a lot of emotion involved. A quantitative kind of assessment. We can look at numbers and determine if we're on time, on budget, perhaps on scope, and whether or not it's physically or humanly possible to actually recover in the time frame that we have to. Those provide us with an understanding as to whether or not we can go forward. We can look at individual processes from a behavioral kind of point of view, the process things. We can look at client satisfaction, team satisfaction. We can look at whether or not we're doing change management correctly. We can look at the flow of our SDLC and decide, hey, we're not doing this correctly. So all three of these kinds of assessments provide a mechanism to take and use a framework and take out the emotion out of the decision. Obviously, there will be all sorts of emotions that go along with this, but pulling back and having a framework to say, here are the holes versus what I perceive or my cognitive bias might lead me to believe. So personally, I'm a fan of combining, by the way, process, sort of qualitative and behavior kinds of assessments with quantitative, because I think they can be predictive in nature. But once you have that kind of thing, we can tell whether or not the project is truly off kilter. We can look at